Yeah, I mean, look, anytime you've missed, a couple weeks, it's going to take some time to get acclimated. I think it's going to take some time to build endurance. She hadn't really been able to practice all that much either. They pressured 94 feet, so again, you got to make sure that you're able to withstand some of that.
Stephanie White just stood at that podium, with cameras rolling, with reporters in the room, with the entire basketball world watching, and refused to build the offense around Caitlin Clark. Let me say that again so every single person watching this video fully absorbs what just happened. The head coach of the Indiana Fever, the woman who is supposed to be the architect of the most exciting rebuild in women's basketball, stood at a post-game podium after a brutal, embarrassing loss and talked about Caitlin Clark like she was a problem to be managed, rather than a generational weapon to be unleashed. And Kelsey Mitchell, standing right there beside her, did nothing to push back, nothing. The silence from both of them about what this team is actually supposed to be built around was the loudest, most telling, most insane thing I have witnessed from this franchise in a long time. Welcome back. This is Rim Run, and today we are ripping the doors off the absolute dysfunction that is unfolding inside the Indiana Fever organization, and we are not leaving a single stone unturned.
I think Flo is always disjointed, disoriented when you don't defend. I think that anything that you want to do on the offensive end, you can't do when you don't defend the ball.
Before I walk you through exactly what Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell said at that podium, and I promise you, the details are going to make your jaw drop, I need you to understand something that the mainstream basketball conversation keeps deliberately skipping over. This is not a one-game story. This is not a minutes restriction story. This is a coaching identity crisis that has been building for weeks, and I have been documenting it right here on this channel. I made a video breaking down the two-system problem, the way this team plays one style when Caitlin Clark is on the floor and a completely different style when she is off it. And the response in the comments was overwhelming. You guys already knew something was wrong. You felt it. And now we have the receipts, straight from the mouths of the people running this team. Here is what I need you to hold on to for the next 9 minutes of this video. Stephanie White went to that podium tonight and described the process of reintegrating Caitlin Clark, the most important player on this roster, like it was some kind of inconvenient logistical puzzle. Not an opportunity, not a priority, a puzzle. And when Kelsey Mitchell got to the microphone, the framing she chose, the language she used, painted a picture that is going to make every single person watching this video deeply uncomfortable. Stay with me, because the clip I am going to show you at the 3.5-minute mark is the most damning piece of evidence this franchise has accidentally put on record. Do not go anywhere.
So she's going to continue to be better, and we're going to continue to be better, and as we get her back, working back in.
Let me walk you through the concrete facts of what happened, because the details matter enormously here. The Indiana Fever just lost to the Los Angeles Sparks. Let that land for a second. The Sparks, a team playing without Kelsey Plum, playing without Cameron Brink, two of their most important contributors. A team that, by any honest measure, is one of the most undermanned rosters in the league right now. And the Fever, with Caitlin Clark back in uniform, with a full roster otherwise available, could not match their energy. That is the word Stephanie White used herself. Energy. She said, quote, "I felt like we just didn't match their energy." That is what your head coach says after losing to a shorthanded team that she just described as a capable opponent, as if she needed to protect the Sparks from embarrassment by inflating their resume. Now here is where it gets truly baffling. When a reporter asked Stephanie White directly about Caitlin Clark's return, about playing her 16 minutes, about the reintegration process, White's answer was a masterclass in deliberate, gutless deflection. She talked about building endurance. She talked about full court pressure at 94 feet. She talked about how it is never easy when you are reintegrating after injury. Every single one of those things, taken in isolation, sounds reasonable. But you guys already know the real story, because I broke it down 3 weeks ago, and the footage is in my last video. The reason reintegration is such a catastrophic issue for this franchise is not Caitlin Clark's injury. It is the fact that this coaching staff runs two completely different systems. One with Clark on the floor, one with Clark on the bench. And there is no cohesion, no identity, no through line connecting either version of this team. That is not a medical problem. That is a coaching failure. A brutal, absolute, inexcusable coaching failure. And then, and this is the part that I could not believe when I watched it, White said they are going to work her back in. Work her back in. The most important player on the roster. The player this franchise was supposed to be built around. And the maximum consecutive minutes she played in this game was 3 minutes. 3. Let that sink in. 3 minutes at a stretch, and then back to the bench. If you have a minutes restriction that severe, the honest, competent, professional thing to do is sit her until she can play meaningful minutes. You do not put a player back in uniform to play 90-second stints and then wonder why the offense has no rhythm. Don't take my word for it. The coach said it herself. Watch this.
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime you've missed, a couple weeks, it's going to take some time to get acclimated. I think it's going to take some time to build endurance. She hadn't really been able to practice all that much either. They pressured 94 feet, so again, you got to make sure that you're able to withstand some of that.
She said it, with cameras rolling. After what we all just watched in that game, Stephanie White said that to the media. Let me say it back to you in the harshest and most accurate framing possible. The head coach of the Indiana Fever just told a room full of reporters that reintegrating Caitlin Clark is hard because she has not been able to practice much and because the team faces full court pressure. She said it like it was Caitlin Clark's fault for not being ready. She said it like the minutes restriction, the one her own staff designed, the one that has Clark riding a stationary bike while her teammates play, is some external force that nobody controls. She did not once say, "We need to build the offense around her, she is the priority." Every decision we make runs through Caitlin Clark, not once. And that silence is not an accident. That silence is a choice. That is not coaching. That is sabotage.
I think flow is always disjointed, disoriented when you don't defend. I think that anything that you want to do on the offensive end, you can't do when you don't defend the ball.
Now I want to escalate this, because what happened at that podium tonight is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern. And I have been documenting this pattern right here on this channel, and every single one of those receipts is sitting in the comments of my last 3 videos. Pass 1, the tactical failure. Let me be entirely clear about what happened on the floor tonight, before we even get to the podium. The Fever gave up 60 points in the paint to the Los Angeles Sparks. 60 in the paint. Stephanie White stood there and acknowledged the defensive breakdowns, acknowledged the transition defense failures, acknowledged that turnovers led to easy layups for the Sparks. But here is what she did not acknowledge, and this irks my nerves every single time I watch this franchise operate. She never once addressed Kelsey Mitchell's turnovers. Not once. Kelsey Mitchell had horrific turnovers in this game, turnovers that led directly to Sparks scores, and Stephanie White did not sub her out, did not address it at the podium, did not hold her accountable in any public way. But Caitlin Clark, who played 16 total minutes on a strict restriction, who was not on the floor for the majority of the defensive breakdowns, gets the reintegration is difficult treatment. You want to talk about who is being protected in this organization and who is being ignored? The answer is right there in the post-game press conference. That is not a coaching decision. That is sabotage. Pass 2, the pattern of behavior. I want every single person watching this video to understand that this post-game press conference did not happen in a vacuum. This is the same coaching staff that designed a system with no cohesive identity, one offense for when Clark is on the floor, a completely different offense for when she is not. That structural failure has been visible for weeks. I made a video on this 3 weeks ago. I told you this was coming. The footage is in my last video. The two-system problem is not a secret. It is baked into the way this team practices, the way it runs its rotations, the way it manages its roster. And the result is exactly what you saw tonight. A team that, in Kelsey Mitchell's own words, could not find a decent flow offensively. A team that, in Stephanie White's own words, did not match the energy of a shorthanded Sparks squad. 3 games with this two-system chaos. 3 games of offensive disorientation. 3 times Caitlin Clark has paid the price for a coaching structure that was never built around her. 3 games. 3. Let that sink in. Pass 3. The enabler complicity. Here is the part of this conversation that nobody on television is willing to have with you, and it is the conversation that the people who actually run this league do not want you to look at too closely. Stephanie White did not build this disaster alone. The Indiana Fever front office signed off on a roster construction and a coaching philosophy that produces this exact outcome. When you run 2 different systems, when your team has no identity, no through line, no clear answer to the question of who this roster is built around, that is not a one-person failure. That is an organizational failure. And the assistant coaches on that bench, the front office executives who approved this approach, the analysts who designed the minutes restriction plan, every single one of them watched Caitlin Clark ride a stationary bike while her team gave up 60 points in the paint to a shorthanded Sparks team. And every single one of them stayed silent. Receipts coming. Pass 4. The cost to Caitlin Clark. Let me tell you what Caitlin Clark has actually lost in this situation, because I want you to sit with this for a second. She came back from injury. She laced up. She was ready to compete. And the plan, the deliberate, intentional, staff-approved plan, was to play her in 90-second stints and 3-minute bursts while her team ran a completely different offensive system around her absence. She cannot build rhythm in 90 seconds. She cannot re-establish her court vision and her passing lanes and her shooting timing in 3-minute intervals. She cannot be the player she is capable of being when the coaching staff treats her return as a logistical inconvenience rather than the central organizing principle of everything this team does. The most exciting player in women's basketball, a player who has done more for the visibility and growth of this league than any single decision this franchise has made, is sitting on a stationary bike while her team loses to a short-handed Sparks squad. That is what Caitlin Clark's prime is being burned for. And here is the receipt that nobody on TV will play for you, because of what it proves about how this team actually talks about Caitlin Clark when the cameras are still rolling.
So she's going to continue to be better, and we're going to continue to be better, and as we get her back, working back in.
Did you hear that? Kelsey Mitchell, when asked about the offensive disjointedness, about the lack of flow, about the inability to get things going on that end of the floor, said that flow is always disjointed and disoriented when you do not defend. She did not say, "We need to get Caitlin back into rhythm. We need to build around her. She makes us better on both ends." She talked about defense as the root cause of the offensive dysfunction, which, fine, defense matters, that is true. But the entire basketball world just watched Stephanie White stand at that same podium and describe the difficulty of reintegrating Caitlin Clark into the offense. And now Kelsey Mitchell is saying the offense has no flow because of the defense. Neither one of them said the obvious thing. Neither one of them said, Caitlin Clark is our best player and we need to build everything around getting her back. That omission is not accidental. That omission is deliberate. And I couldn't believe watching it unfold in real time. Before I lay out the full verdict on this situation, I want you to hear one more clip, because of what it proves about the specific language this coaching staff uses when describing Caitlin Clark's role on this team. As we get her back, working her back in, that is the phrase, that is the language Stephanie White chose. Not building around her, not making sure she has everything she needs to be the player we know she is. Working her back in, like Caitlin Clark is a spare part being reinserted into a machine that was running just fine without her. Like the franchise's entire identity does not hinge on her being healthy, engaged, and at the center of every offensive decision this team makes. I have been saying this for weeks, and every single one of those predictions came true. Receipts are in the comments of my last video. Now let me give you 5 more predictions, and I want you to save this video, because we are coming back to every single one of these. Prediction 1. Stephanie White's job security. If Stephanie White is still the head coach of the Indiana Fever by the time this team hits the midpoint of the season with a losing record, I want every single person watching this video to come back to this comment section and roast me, because the way this franchise is being managed right now, the two-system chaos, the post-game deflections, the treatment of Caitlin Clark as a reintegration project rather than the cornerstone of the entire operation, is not sustainable. Front offices do not absorb this kind of public dysfunction indefinitely. The pressure from fans, from the league, from the people who actually care about what this franchise is supposed to represent, is going to become impossible to ignore. Stephanie White is coaching on borrowed time. Save this clip. Prediction 2. Caitlin Clark's next move. And here is what we are going to see from Caitlin Clark herself in the coming weeks. She is going to put up a performance, a genuinely legendary, undeniable, full minutes performance that makes this entire minutes restriction conversation look as absurd as it actually is. Because that is who Caitlin Clark is. She does not fold under this kind of pressure. She does not shrink when the organization around her is failing. She shows up, she laces up, and she plays the kind of basketball that reminds every single person watching why this league's entire trajectory changed the moment she arrived. Watch the next 2 weeks. When she gets real minutes, actual, meaningful, consecutive minutes, the numbers are going to be impossible to explain away. Prediction 3. The franchise consequence. Meanwhile, the Indiana Fever front office is going to face a reckoning that goes beyond one bad loss to a short-handed Sparks team. The people who constructed this roster, who approved this coaching philosophy, who allowed a two-system identity crisis to become the defining characteristic of this team's season, they are going to be forced to make a public statement about the direction of this franchise. Watch the next 2 weeks. The pressure from the fan base, from the media, from the league itself, is going to force someone in that front office to either defend Stephanie White publicly or begin the process of distancing themselves from her decisions. Either outcome is going to be a story. Mark this video. Prediction 4. The news cycle breaks wide open. The story is going to break wide open when the reporters who cover this team on a daily basis, the ones who were in that room watching Stephanie White deflect those post-game questions, start connecting the dots between the two-system problem, the minutes restriction, and the post-game language we heard tonight. The conversation that television refuses to let you have right now is already being had in press boxes and in locker room hallways. When that conversation goes public, and it will go public, this video is going to be the receipt. I told you this was the story 3 weeks ago. I am telling you again right now. Prediction 5, the season outcome. And here is the season-level verdict. If this franchise does not make a fundamental change to how it builds its offense around Caitlin Clark, if the two-system chaos continues, if the minutes management stays this conservative, if the post-game press conferences keep producing the kind of deflection we heard tonight, the Indiana Fever misses the playoffs. Full stop. A team with Caitlin Clark on the roster, healthy and available, should not be in a position where losing to a shorthanded Sparks team is a realistic outcome. The talent is there, the audience is there, the opportunity is there, but the coaching infrastructure to capitalize on all of it is not. And until that changes, this team is going to keep underperforming in ways that are painful to watch. Mark this video, come back at the end of the season. And here is the thing I want you to hold on to as we close this out. Caitlin Clark, right now, today, is lacing up her shoes and showing up to practice and doing everything that is asked of her inside a system that was not built to maximize what she does. She is not complaining publicly. She is not making this about herself. She is doing the work, absorbing the dysfunction, and waiting for the moment when she gets the runway she deserves. That is who she is. And when that moment comes, when she finally gets real minutes in a system that is actually built around her, every single person who watched this press conference and heard Stephanie White talk about working her back in is going to understand exactly how badly this organization squandered its window. Drop your most honest take in the comments right now. Is Stephanie White actively undermining Caitlin Clark's development? Or is the minutes restriction a legitimate medical decision that we are all misreading? Pick a side, defend it. I want to read every single take. And while you are down there, save this comment. Stephanie White will not be the head coach of the Indiana Fever by the midpoint of this season with a losing record. If I am right, come back and tell me. If I am wrong, roast me. I can take it. Tag the friend who keeps telling you that Stephanie White is doing a great job managing this roster. Make them watch this video and tell you they still believe it after hearing that post-game press conference with their own ears. And here is what is coming next on this channel. Tomorrow we are going to break down exactly what needs to happen for the Indiana Fever to course correct before this season becomes truly unrecoverable. The specific roster decisions, the specific coaching adjustments, and the one move that could change everything before the deadline. If you are not subscribed, you are going to miss it. Hit the bell right now. This is Rim Run. We will see you in the next video.